Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. I've been giving a lot of thought to design, and specifically vehicle design. Now, it cannot be denied that there is industrial espionage in every field. I mean, most people get a pretty competitive head start if they can figure out the program you're using, the microchip you're using, and stuff like that. But back in the 80s and the 90s, there was considerable consternation that the Soviets were stealing the United States designs. And what we have here is a case between, is it stealing a design, or is it simply the exact same design is the maximized design, and that's going to be the ultimate product no matter what you do? Let's look at the MiG-29, the Su-35. They both look pretty darn similar to the F-15. Aha! We've caught them. Twin tails, twin engines. But it isn't quite that simple. You see, the F-15 itself was a response to the MiG-25. Big wings, big engines. So did I say MiG-15 or MiG-25? The MiG-25. F-15 was a response to the MiG-25. Big engines, big wings. The difference is the F-15 was designed to be super maneuverable, whereas the MiG-25 was designed to go really fast. Because they were trying to counter, well, they had an interceptor that was supposed to counter the American XB-70 bomber. And the best way to do that was to have two big engines, big powerful radar out in front, and carry a lot of missiles. The Americans messed up. They thought this thing was actually the most superior airplane ever developed, and they went all out to make the F-15 just as good. So that's why all these planes look very similar, because they were all trying to do roughly the same job in slightly different ways. And the best way to do it is to have two great big engines on it. Space race. For a lot of the space race, and indeed the stuff we're going back to mostly today, is run by a capsule. If you look at Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, there's not really a lot of difference between them besides scale. The Americans had kind of a triangular, almost funnel-like body, whereas the Soviets stuck to a more round body. And other than that, there wasn't a lot of difference between the two of them. The Russians have had the exact same spacecraft since the 1960s, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There was talk about them working with the European Space Agency to develop a completely independent capsule, but thanks to the conflict in the Central Asian region, that's not going to happen. The United States came up with the space shuttle. It's iconic. Even today, they put it up in movies, despite the fact that no one has used this thing in 10 years. It's old, it's tired, it's obsolete. But the Soviet Union came up with the Buran space shuttle. Look at these things side by side. They're almost identical. They don't perform at all the same. The space shuttle was a glider once it came back in. The Buran actually had proper engines in it, so it could maneuver a lot better in space. It could come back down, and actually, if it had a bad flight path or something, it could come around and go again. The Soviet space capsules were pretty much unpiloted, whereas the United States had that idea, we have to have the pilot being able to override things. Yuri Gagarin, the first man in orbit, pretty much didn't have to do much as far as his space flight was concerned. He had other experiments to worry about. Whereas in the United States, every one of their pilots had to know every single knob and dial and everything inside of the spacecraft. So what looks like one side is coming up with and the other side is innovating turns out just to be the best way to do things. I'm very much looking forward to the B-21 flying and the Pak-Da, which is the Russian equivalent. I guarantee they're going to look very similar because they're stealth bombers. Well, stealth requires a very specific shape. The Russians, well, one Russian actually came up with the theory of stealth. The only reason the Russians didn't pursue it is because their computing technology simply wasn't able to calculate all the angles and facets that you needed to build into it to have any sort of chance of having stealth. Then the United States was ahead here, which is why nobody has copied the F-117 design. Nobody. The Chinese have that weird canard, was it the J-20, J-20, whatever the heck it is, which I think may give you good front aspect stealth. But other than that, you look at an F-22 and an F-35, they don't look dramatically different. You even add in the Russians' Su-57, they all look the same because they all need to fulfill the same purpose. And ultimately, you set a whole bunch of people together, get a whole bunch of contractors together. Tell them you need a building. What kind of building? Let's make it simple. An apartment. All apartments look the same because it's the best design. It's got to take a lot of weight. It's got to take a lot of people. It's got to give them the best amount of living space. Still needs to have stairs and elevators and all that kind of thing. So there's always somebody wanting to interrupt me. But like I said, it's just simply the most efficient manner of building that kind of a building. You have a square. Why a square? Because it makes everything easy. The rooms line up. The rooms are square because people like square rooms. Now, could you build a circular building? Absolutely, and it has been done, and very well. Back in the 70s, they used to have conversation pits, and I'm sure some of these buildings are still around. It was basically a circular kind of couch, and you sat there, you had conversations. Some people would have a fireplace in the middle. When I was a little kid growing up, I thought they were the coolest things in the world. My mother took me to university, her university. I was definitely not that much of a child prodigy. And they had them everywhere, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And by the time I wound up going to university, they'd removed them all. Because you know what? A circle is just not as efficient a means for to have people sit as a square is. And for a good 3 months of the year, university is packed to the gilders with human beings that want to sit. So you need every inch of space available. It was a quite logical decision for them to come through. So, are people stealing ideas? Or are they simply working with ideas that they know exist? Most of the time they're working with ideas that they know exist. Look at cars. They've been boring forever. Sure, you get one, a Gran Torino from 1956 or something. It looks different because the style was different. The engines were different. Everything was different back in the day. You put that next to, say, a Toyota Matrix, and from the outside they look different, but the inside they're radically different. Which one I'm going to trust my life to? The Toyota Matrix. Because it has modern safety features, disc brakes, and, it's probably going to burn 10 times less fuel because that's what modern technology is about. They're worried about making sure you get from place A to place B and that you live during the process. Back in the day, people wanted big tail fins because they thought those looked pretty. The The second people wanted to save money on fuel, they got rid of those big tail fins awfully quickly. And it didn't require any design initiative aside from realizing what people want. And that's ultimately what everything is. The customer is always right. Not the idiot on their phone complaining that on their pizza they didn't get enough pepperoni. No, that customer is a jerk. Well, unless, they got no pepperoni and they ordered pepperoni, in which case, yeah, they got a point, but it's $1.79. Who cares? But the customer decides the market. If you want a fuel-efficient vehicle, you're going to get one of these boring, boxy, kind of roundish things that you see wandering around today. If you want a fighter jet that goes very fast and is very maneuverable, you're going to wind up with a twin-engine, pretty aerodynamic piece of work. And you know what? If you want a pizza, sure, you can get a calzone, but pizza comes best in a circle. Housing comes best in a square. And that's just simply the way things are. Because after all, if you have a square pizza, not everybody's going to get a corner piece. Whereas if you get a circular pizza, everybody gets a corner piece. So remember, function follows design. You can only design a certain way to make things function properly. Last example, boats. Yes, there's been hydrofoils, there have been the Caspian Sea monster, there have been tons of hovercraft, there's been hovercraft. People have tried tons of way to move through the water, but ultimately it comes back to the same basic plan. Whether you're a multi-billionaire with one of those $6 trillion yachts, whatever the heck they are, or whether you're going out in a dinghy that you just want to go fishing in. Same plan. Pointed nose, square back that you can put an engine on, or canoe. No matter what, they all look pretty much the same. Because you know what? After thousands of years of designing boats, humanity has that stuff pretty much down. So with that, yes, secrets are being stolen. There's a whole market of industrial espionage, and I don't know a whole lot about it. But instead of sitting back and saying, oh, this person stole this from this person and that person did this, just realize some solutions are self-evident. Like I said, you want to build a good building? You build a square apartment. Want to build a good car? You build a kind of dumpy little thing and make it lightweight with a lot of safety features. Want to build a good plane? Make it have 2 engines and give it all sorts of power. That's just the way things work in this world. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, subscribe, click the button to get notifications whenever we publish something new, and we hope you have a fantastic day.